Today I've got a quick video for you on how to make a super fat Reese bass that works in a ton of different genres. I've explored a ton of different ways of making Reeses over the past decade, and I particularly like this one because of how simple it is to make, yet how well it translates into a bunch of different genres. It sounds like this. Alright, today we are in Ableton. I'm working on this kind of soft, progressive house tune. And the synth du jour is going to be Sylenth today. So we're going to use Sylenth1, an oldie but a goodie. This synth has stood the test of time for low-end stuff particularly, as well as pads. Very good analog modeling synth. So I've already got a MIDI pattern set up here. Sorry. I love that sound so much. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to clear out this default preset, which is hilarious, by the way. Click into the Sylenth window and hit Control-J. That's going to clear out the synth entirely, and you'll be left with just a saw wave. You can also go to Preset and then go down to Clear, and that'll clear out the synth. So we're going to start things off on Oscillator 1 by dropping that by 1 octave. And we're going to drop Oscillator 2 by 1 octave as well. Make that a saw wave. And we're going to change the voices on both of these. I'm going to boost them both up to 8 voices. And that's going to sound like this. Now all those oscillators are synced, so it's just making it louder at this point. So we're gonna detune oscillator B just a little bit. We'll probably go up to 1.53. Okay, now to give it that wide detuned Reese sound, we're also going to adjust the fine control a little bit. So that's getting closer, but we can hear, you get this sort of sweeping effect because it's re-triggering those oscillators every single time. So we're going to turn off re-trigger on oscillator A2. And then we are going to go over to our filter section and we're going to change this to a low pass filter. We can just keep the cutoff right there at 12 o'clock and we're just going to boost the drive maybe a quarter of the way up. Now we can play with this cutoff. And that's going to give us some movement. We can automate that. We can assign that to an envelope if we want a different sound, or we can map it to an LFO. There's a lot of flexibility, but you can change the tone entirely just with this cutoff. So let's make this a little bit more interesting, a little bit dirtier. So we're going to go over to part B, and we are going to change this to noise, just one voice. And of course, if we do that without filtering it, it's just going to sound like this. So what we have to do, of course, is add a filter type low pass. We're just going to do B, and we're going to take this cutoff down quite a bit. Now we have just a little bit more grit when we open this all the way up. Now we can start getting into things that are going to add a little bit more character. So we're going to flip over to the chorus tab here in the effects, and we're just going to tweak this a little bit. So first off, let's turn that dry wet down and just walk it up. We can play with the delay just a little bit. Give it a little bit more feedback. Now, the more you play with that feedback, the more movement you're going to get within this sound. And of course, because this is a bass, we don't want it to be super wide in the stereo field, so we're going to turn this width down just a little bit. Now that's pretty much it as far as the sound design within Sylenth. Let's start adding a few things to really make this fat. First thing we're going to do right off the bat is we're going to check our mono compatibility. So I'm just going to play this and I'm going to flip it into mono. So it does lose a little bit of the character. That's going to happen when you have a wide bass like this. But what we're going to do to really make our mono compatibility work a little bit better is we're going to turn on bass mono, and this basically just makes the low end of it mono. So that's going to help the bass feel more centered and keep that low end really tight and in the middle, but let the upper end of the synth keep floating around in the stereo space. Next, we're going to add one of my favorite stock effects in Ableton, and that is Saturator. Now, Saturator's great, and honestly, you can pretty much leave it at default settings for this. We're just going to turn soft clipping on, and we're going to crank up the drive a little bit. Excellent. It's starting to feel pretty thick. We're just going to add a little bit more character with cabinet. Hang on a second. There's a tractor driving by. We are in the rave barn after all. Okay, so we're going to change that output to dual. We're going to change the speaker to a 4x10 bass cab. And we're going to go ahead and change the microphone to far. Now let's hear what that sounds like at 100% wet. So it's a little boxy now, but I think you can see where I'm going with this, and that's just to give it a little bit of that boxy cab tone, but not too much. And there we go. Now all you have to do is select all these. You can click on the first thing, and then you can hold Shift and click on the last thing, and then hit Control G or Command G on a Mac. That's going to turn it into a rack. Click on this little knobby deal here. We're going to open up Sylenth, hit Configure, click on this Cutoff. Turn off configure. We can close this window now. And then we're going to map this to macro 1. Now we just remove all those little macros, and now we have this one master cutoff macro. Tidy this up, and now we have a lot of control, and it's not taking up any space in the actual channel. And we're off to the races. Thanks so much for watching, and if you found value in this video, please consider subscribing, and I will see you in the next one.